I'm gonna give you guys the foods that I ate to lose 125 pounds. You can make yourself an omelet instead of just eating tilapia. It makes dieting easier. Start to eat less calories as that protein percentage goes up. Be careful of fat bombs. If you go from a ketogenic diet and you lose 60 pounds to no diet, you go back to being the fat you were yesterday, you're going to gain the weight back. When you're obese, you are not allowing yourself to become the person that you can really become. 125 fucking pounds. I'm gonna give you guys the foods that I ate to lose 125 pounds. Basically what I did is I went on something called the War on Carbs. My brother and I shook hands years ago and we did the Braveheart shake, and we vowed to do this War on Carbs, and it was like, I don't know, sometime in like November, and we were like, let's do the War on Carbs basically to like the end of the year or until we went to like the Olympia or some trade show that we were going to for fitness, and we just want to get in a little bit better shape. The War on Carbs basically just entails a ketogenic diet. I later went on to write a book called The War on Carbs. I recognize that carbohydrates are not the devil. I recognize that carbohydrates are not responsible for making anyone fat. What makes us fat is ourselves. What made yourself fat is yourself, and your inability to control the overall amount of energy that you were consuming, and then maybe potentially an inability to burn up a lot of that energy, right? I understand a lot of those things. However, a War on Carbs is really nice. And let me just explain why before I just go and give you the foods, which I will do coming up. I promise you I'll give you just a straight, like, these are the foods that I ate. Because that is very important sometimes, to be black and white and to be pretty strict and to stay in a very particular lane. What I've recognized for myself and for many other people, that when you're dieting, it's really critical that you have foods that you still really enjoy the taste of, that nearly every single time you eat, for most people, it needs to be pretty enjoyable. And when it starts to become you're eating like healthy-ish stuff, it sometimes just doesn't taste so good. But what if I was to tell you, you get to eat ribeye, you get to eat bacon, you get to eat sausage, you get to have pepperoni, you get to have eggs, you get to have chicken with the skin on it, you get to have chicken thigh, you get to have chicken legs, you get to eat various forms of pork. You can have the fattiest stuff that you can think of. You can have butter, ghee, tallow, just kind of a list of stuff goes on and on. When you can make yourself an omelet when you're really hungry instead of just eating egg whites or tilapia, it makes dieting easier. Didn't say easy, but easier than the other options. Those other options can lead us to be not satisfied and also sometimes not satiated. I think that there's something beyond just being satiated, because there is something called the protein leveraging hypothesis, and that theory basically states that the more protein that we eat, we start to notice that in animals, in rodents, and in humans, we start to eat less calories as that protein percentage goes up. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon because you are satiated. However, I would say that when that protein percentage starts to get real high, kind of a la a bodybuilder getting ready for a show, you're just not going to feel so great. And you're not going to have much energy to run on, because bodybuilders, they'll cut their fats and they'll cut their carbs. They're certainly not going to cut their protein. But because they're cutting all those energy sources, they now don't have much of an energy source coming in. Here's where the War on Carbs comes into play, and here's where the ketogenic diet comes into play. In the absence of carbohydrates, and when you eat plenty of fats, your body will start to produce ketones. Your body produces ketones anyway, but you will produce more ketones in the absence of carbohydrates. I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, I'm not a PhD, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not any of those things. I'm speaking from experience most of the time, and maybe some other parts of the time, I'm speaking directly out of my ass. But it's my belief that people do produce ketones, whether you're on a ketogenic diet or not. I think it is just part of our like energy process, and I believe ketones to be the fourth macronutrient in a way. So I believe that people do produce ketones throughout the night, and ketones are a great energy source. And there's some controversy on ketones being a preferred fuel source for the brain versus glucose. There's some debate on that. And Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, who I've had on my podcast in the past, check out the podcast I did with him and Thomas DeLauer. We went into this stuff deep. I mean, it was a deep dive into keto. So if you really want to nerd out, you follow some of that information on some of those podcasts. But just here, just giving to you straight, when you go on a ketogenic diet, there's a lot, in my opinion, there's a lot less suffering that goes on. Because we get to eat these fattier, tastier foods, fattier fish, fattier cuts of meat, and omelets, and just a bunch of yummy stuff like that. And even throwing in some heavy cream into coffee, throwing some heavy cream into protein shakes, having buffalo wings. In my journey to lose all the weight that I've lost over the last 15 years or so and kept it off, there's a lot of people out there talking about weight loss, but who's done it? Who's done it to the tune of what you've seen me do? Who's done it and turned it into anything else? Maybe David Goggins comes to mind. And David Goggins, what does he rarely talk about? He doesn't even really talk about nutrition, does he? Because he just knows there's so many other factors in there, and nutrition can sometimes be a rabbit hole, and it can sometimes be a religion, sometimes for people as well. But when your body starts to produce these ketones, it seems like it is a great energy source for the body to run off of. It seems like it's a great fuel source. Some people will even say that you have to teach your body this process. Some people believe you have to become what is called fat adapted. One of the cool things about being keto is that it's like a club. And it's a club that you can't just get into by like flashing your ID or saying I'm VIP or saying, hey, I know so-and-so. You have to actually earn it. You have to actually work for it. There's no other diet that works that way. If you're not staying absent of carbohydrates, you're not abstaining from carbohydrates for a week, 2 weeks, in some cases 3 or 4 weeks, you're not officially in ketosis. You're not officially even on the diet yet, which I don't think is that important, but it is interesting. So if you prick your finger and you check your millimolars for ketones, it's supposed to read, I think, 2 millimolars. I could be way off on that, because some of this stuff, I haven't looked at some of this information in a while. But a lot of this stuff isn't really the most important thing about keto. The most important thing about keto is that you start to eat fat, you remove carbohydrates in your diet, you have a war on carbs, and you see how long you can go without carbohydrates. It's not some sort of suffering thing. It's not some sort of thing where you're passing out and all this other stuff. If you have the electrolytes in your system, and if you have the fats in your system, you're going to be cool. You're going to be good to go. But why would anybody ever select a diet like this? I'll tell you why right here. Because when you start to go keto, it sort of clicks your brain over. I know we hear about clarity. We hear about, oh my God, my brain was on fire. I could solve math equations and I could write better and I could, I personally haven't really experienced a lot of those things. What I have experienced though is being locked in. I'm like, okay, and I'm doing ketogenic diet right now. And I'm on this mission to get down to 200 pounds. My absolute fattest, I actually would love to see, weighing 198 pounds, just because that's a weight class in powerlifting. But this entire time, going from 330 down to 270, down to 250, down to 230, and so on, and down to where I am today, which is 212 pounds, none of this has felt like suffering. None of this has felt, it's felt challenging at times, but I utilize fasting and I utilize keto. And here are some of the foods that I eat on a ketogenic diet that have worked really well for me. I'm going to give you some of the foods that I eat, that I've eaten previously, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about why I choose some different things today. What I used to eat is eggs, cheese, quite a bit of cheese, bacon, sausage, red meat in various forms, steaks, ground beef. Now, as far as ground beef goes, I used to try to do my best to select still fairly lean cuts of ground beef. And it wasn't like the leanest, but I would go 85. The reason why I would do that, I was just like, the 80 and the 70 and some of these other things that some people sell. I'm like, I don't think I need that much fat. I don't think I need in a meal, I don't think I need 70 grams of fat. So I have done that before, and I think it can be a mistake because your calories can just go flying through the roof. So just because you're keto doesn't mean that you cannot. It doesn't mean that you're not adhering to paying attention to the overall amount of energy that you're consuming, your calories. It's still good to be mindful. It's still good to know that stuff a bit, because the more calories you consume, the more time you're going to be spending on trying to figure out the particulars of your diet and your fitness. So you could literally be wasting your time by just overeat. You overeat, and it's going to cost you somewhere where you're going to have to spend a lot of extra time fitnessing all this stuff off your body, or trying to diet all this stuff off your body. Body fat being the main culprit there. So yeah, some different forms of red meat. I think it's important to kind of bring up. I mean, whenever I mention red meat to people, I think a lot of times they just think of one or two things, but there's so many different cuts of steak. There's so many different types of meat. There's so many different places to shop online. There's so many different grocery stores. There's Costco, there's Safeway, there's these different places you can go. I mean, I love Certified Piedmontese. It's my favorite. They're a sponsor of mine, so I'm always going to plug them. You can use the code MarkBell, and you can get 25% off. Grass-fed, grass-finished beef. A lot of those steaks and a lot of those cuts are very lean, and I'll get to that in a moment. I used to cook up quite a bit of omelets. I mean, I would eat an omelet in the morning, and I would eat an omelet for dinner quite often. A lot of times, because of participation, because my kids were younger, I would eat what my wife cooked, and I would eat with my family, because I always felt that was important. Almost every single time my wife cooked, there was some sort of entree that was primarily protein and fats. And so it wasn't hard for me to eat that part. If she had something like mashed potatoes or something, she kind of understood what I was doing. And my wife eats very healthy as well. Our children eat very healthy as well. So there really wasn't a lot of influx of a lot of junky stuff. But every once in a while, as a parent, you're like, you make something for the kids that's a little quicker, because maybe we didn't plan ahead for that day. But for the most part, they ate what we ate. And I believe that should happen in every household. I'm a firm believer of that. And I think that that would help out America quite a bit in its quest to become less fat, in its quest to become healthier. Some other foods that I would eat in terms of oils and cooking with stuff: tallow, butter, olive oil, coconut oil. Now, coconut oil is a pretty big one, and I'll tell you why. Because I used to have quite a bit of Bulletproof coffee. Bulletproof coffee is normally grass-fed ghee and MCT oil, or grass-fed butter and MCT oil. You can also use MCT oil powder. The biggest difference between the way I used to eat and the way I eat now, I have a lot more knowledge on a variety of things. Those variety of things include, I can be selective about my fats now. I can kind of pick and choose my fats, and I can pick a lot of times I choose leaner sources of meat, but I'll cook the meat in tallow. I'll cook the meat in ghee. I will sometimes choose to have my fat come from somewhere else. So as an example, I might buy 93.7 grass-fed, grass-finished lean ground beef. But then I might add grass-fed, grass-finished cheese to it because I like the flavor of the cheese. The cheese is now a 1-to-1 ratio, which a 1-to-1 ratio is really nice for ketogenic diets. 1-to-1 meaning 1 gram of fat per gram of protein. Some people like to look at percentages, but that's just always kind of confused me. 1 gram, gram to gram, 1 gram of protein to 1 gram of fat. So if you're 200 pounds, you're going to try to have around 200 grams of protein for the day and around 200 grams of fat. And you're going to really abstain from carbs except for vegetables. Now, some people know that I'm a huge fan of the carnivore diet as well. And they're like, well, vegetables, that's not... Although I'm a fan of the carnivore diet, I am not a member. I'm not a card-carrying member. I'm not staunchly running around telling people not to eat vegetables. I like vegetables a lot. I eat them quite often. And in fact, when I'm fasting, this is probably for another video, when I'm fasting, I'm pretty much vegan for a day or two because I'm eating fermented vegetables. How weird and ironic is that, right? But that's something we can get into for another video in the future. The fermented vegetable video. How exciting. Anyway, trying to stay on track with the foods. So when I was keto years ago, there also wouldn't have been any, there'd be no fruit. I would have cottage cheese. I would have yogurt. Those cottage cheeses and yogurts and stuff, I would be conscious of the carbohydrates in there. So, pay attention to that. I'm a huge fan of Oikos. They have these Greek yogurts that are just loaded with protein. They have next to no carbohydrates, and Good Culture is an excellent source of cottage cheese. Now, some of these things, they might have a pretty decent amount of carbohydrates per serving, but overall, if I'm finishing the day and I'm getting through the day with under 30 grams of carbohydrates, I'm good to go. And you do that day in and day out, and over a period of time, the glucose and the carbohydrates start to dissipate from the body, and the body starts to get into this fat-burning zone. And it starts to prefer fat as a fuel source, and you start to become, what I mentioned earlier, fat adapted. Now, how scientific fat adaptation is, I don't really know. I don't really care, but I'll tell you this. You'll know when it happens. You'll actually be able to feel, you'll all of a sudden feel a burst of energy, because for a little bit, you're going to feel like shit. Sometimes people talk about the keto flu. The keto flu shouldn't be anything that you experience if you're eating plenty of food. And remember, no matter what diet I'm trying to share with you, and I don't love absolutes, but this is an absolute from me. I believe that you should always start all diets in a calorie surplus. All diets, you should be eating in excess of whatever it is that the person's guiding you towards to eat. So in this case, on a ketogenic diet, you know what I want you to do? I want you to eat. I want you to buy a lot of bacon. I want you to buy a lot of cheese. I want you to buy a lot of eggs, and I want you to eat. I do want you to also be conscious of how much fat you're consuming. I don't think it's a great idea for you to consume 400 grams of fat a day if you're 200 pounds or let's say you're 300 pounds, because that's who this might be helping more so. Some of the people that are 300 pounds or just high body fat percentage, right? I don't want to see you eating 300 to 400 grams of fat. I think that's excessive. Probably hovering in the 200, 250 range is probably almost like the maximum for most people. That's just kind of my own take on it after doing this diet for so long, and after making, Bulletproof coffee and boner broth, my bone broth that I used to make with I'm back to making boner broth, by the way, I can officially say, with the MCT oil, the ghee butter. It's just absolutely delicious, but there's no reason for that thing to have like 50 grams of fat. It should have maybe 6 grams of fat, 8 grams of fat, something way more reasonable. I'm not trying to No one should be fearful of fat. And when you go on a ketogenic diet, you definitely shouldn't be fearful of fat. But what I'm trying to explain to you is like the way that I eat now versus the way that I used to eat then. There's just some things that I know that's a little different little different now. So I tend to eat more fish. So if I'm gonna spend fat calories, I want to spend it on different things other than just straight saturated fat from ground beef. Not because it's bad, just because I like to eat a lot of it. So that's where I might eat cod livers. Cod liver has like 30 grams of fat per serving. It's absolutely insane. I love the flavor of it. I'll eat those once or twice a week. I don't eat them every day. But high in vitamin A, high in vitamin D. That's actually really rare. Most foods are not high in vitamin D. But what you're going to get from oysters and what you're going to get from a lot of this seafood is you're going to get a lot of awesome minerals, you get a lot of zinc and DHA, and a lot of other things that coincide and go really well with going outside and getting the sun and various things. So that's why there's some small changes with the way that I eat now and the way that I used to eat then. Let's switch gears a little bit to some foods that might be like out of the house. So I would go to a restaurant at least once or twice a week. Yeah, probably. I'd go to a restaurant. Actually, now that I think about it, at that time, I'd go to a restaurant probably 3 or 4 days a week. I would go and get a breakfast because like I can make an omelet at home and I can make a really good one, but to be honest, like a lot of times they made them better at restaurants. So I'd go to a restaurant. These restaurants would become familiar with me. They would understand, like, all right, here comes this guy. He's going to order like a side of ham, and he's going to, order in a 6-egg omelet or an 8-egg omelet. And I'm just thinking about it now, and my mouth is like starting to water because I'm thinking about some of the places I used to eat at. It's just so delicious. And yeah, I do understand there's like seed oils and some of these things to think about. But again, that's part of the reason why I eat quite differently now than I did then. But I'm sharing what I did then because it worked. And I know it would work really well for you as well. So I used to go out to restaurants quite a bit. And when I did, I looked forward to the foods I was eating every single time. Now, when I ordered an omelet, yeah, they want to give you toast. They want to give you a side of potatoes. But I would tell them flat out, I do not eat carbs. So please do not put that on my plate. And then they would say like, oh, would you like cottage cheese or you want sliced tomatoes? You want some vegetables? And I'd be like, fuck yeah, I do. Because vegetables were also a big part of the way I was eating at that time. When I go to a restaurant, I also might order a burger. What restaurant doesn't have a burger? What restaurant are you going to that doesn't have chicken or doesn't have a burger? It's like almost every restaurant in the world has some version of that. Or what restaurant doesn't have a salad? So you're caught in a pickle, you're really hungry, you're with friends, and everyone's eating and having a great time, and you don't know what to order. All you can think of is you just order like this chicken Caesar salad. It's like, okay, well, the dressing's not the greatest thing in the world. I'm not super happy and pumped that, you just had this like shot of Caesar dressing that probably is a seed oil, and it's probably like 40 or 50 grams of fat. I'm not exactly excited about it, but can you lose weight on that? Sure you can, because I did it. And that is going to be still a good meal for you on this particular plan in those particular circumstances. There's other reasons why that's important. It's because you probably enjoy the taste of a Caesar salad. You probably enjoy the taste of buffalo wings. I enjoyed the taste of buffalo wings, so I made room for them every week, every Monday. Every Monday, I remember doing it when I was in New York, when I was young, and when I was doing Ketogenic Diet. I can think of the places that I used to go to and get wings. I can remember that, and it was just like, it was so exciting for me. I would have wings, and I'd sit there and watch football. For those of you who don't know, I'm a football freak. I love professional football. I've been watching it since I was a kid. Anytime it's on, I watch it. However, I'm not so fanatical that it interrupts what I need to do. I always go and get mine, and I don't give a fuck what game is on. I don't care how important the game is or how good the game is. I'll miss the best game if I'm training. I don't care, because I I am, developing my own story, not just following in the footsteps of what other people are developing. And I think personally, I think that's like a little healthier than being too fanatical. I mean, so these are the foods that are available. You can go out to eat. You can eat a lot of amazing foods. Vegetables, I ate all vegetables. Lettuce, green beans. I don't love broccoli, but I'd eat broccoli here and there. Cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, with butter and bacon, and even just taking vegetables and dipping them in ranch dressing and stuff. Now, I know the seed oil people might come out and condemn, and if you want to, get Primal Kitchen or get some of these other companies' dressings and sauces because you believe that they're better and different, then that's your prerogative. Go ahead and do that. But like for me, I didn't sweat it because the bigger picture for me at the time was don't weigh 330. The bigger mission was be less fat. So I'm talking to you right now. I want you to think about this. You're asking questions about carnivore. You're asking questions about keto. You're asking questions about counting your macros, tracking your calories. But you're not asking the simple question of, how can I be less fat? You don't need precise details on how to figure that out when you're 300 pounds, when you're 400 pounds. I know these things because I did it. I've done it, and I've kept the weight off. I lost the weight, and it never came back. There wasn't like, remember Mark, and he kind of gained some. No, I never gained it back. I never will. I'm going down to 200 pounds, and for basically the rest of my life, I'm going to stay under 220 pounds, maybe 225. I don't think that's going to change. I mean, goals change, things change, but I think I'm going to keep with that. Other things that I would eat nowadays that maybe I didn't eat then, carnivore crisps, because they didn't exist at that time. Those are amazing. It's just a different type of snack. So check them out. Carnivore crisps. I have a code, Mark Bell, if you want to use it, and check them out. Great products. So a lot of the things I'm mentioning, they are going to be pricey. They are going to be expensive. But it's because they're fucking awesome. Pork and Good. Pork and Good makes pork rinds. They also make pork panko crusted chicken nuggets. How dope is that? And you can dip those chicken nuggets in your favorite sauces or whatever healthy sauces you want to buy. Keto Brick. The Keto Brick didn't exist back when I was doing keto in the late 90s. And shit, that would have been awesome. So Keto Bricks for everybody. Keto Bricks are awesome. The Keto Brick that was just made by Robert Sykes, the owner of Keto Brick, was in collaboration with myself, and we made a total carnivore Keto Brick, which only has 3 carbohydrates. That's never been done before in Keto Brick lore. A lot of times a Keto Brick will have like 8 or 12 grams of carbohydrates, so that's a winner. It is very calorically dense. It does have a lot of fat in it, but it's an amazing product. In terms of beverages, just better is better. Diet sodas and Coke Zeros and some of these things. Like, if you like drinking those things, I don't see too much of a problem of having them here and there. However, I'll say this, like, there's just like a certain code that we're after here. There's a certain mindset that we're after here. And again, when you go onto a ketogenic diet, there's a switch that gets flipped. Where you go from, being somebody that is like not that good at dieting to like becoming a dieting black belt and then a dieting ninja. And you just get better and better and better. And when your body starts to utilize those ketones and you become fat adapted, which I need to touch upon a little bit more, from a mental standpoint, you just made the switch and you feel like I ain't going back for nothing. And that's where you need to be really careful, because a lot of times that's when the most enticing things start to come. And you're like, I've been doing pretty good. I've been on this diet for a while. Maybe it's time for a cheat. Once you start thinking some of those things, There are appropriate times to switch the diet up a little bit. There are appropriate times to change things up a little bit, but you want to keep going. You want to keep going, you want to lean into it, and you want to continue to produce those ketones. Mark Sisson, I think, is kind of the one that pushed a narrative on this, and he coined it, I believe. It does take your body some time to get used to burning on fat, but I don't think it's like your body, runs on carbs and you have to like teach it how to burn fat and teach it how to live off fat. I think the body knows how to do all these things. I just think that whenever you're trying an intervention of any kind, whenever you're trying any kind of diet, it's going to take some time to get used to. And so when you do a ketogenic diet, sometimes people will feel like crap for a few days. Sometimes people will say, oh, it's because you're not fat adapted yet and you're only burning sugar. You're not used to burning fat yet. And that could be the case. Your body's not producing enough ketones yet. Like there's all these things that could be possible, but basically keep pushing on the diet. When you're going to have a breakthrough at some point, but you need to continue to stay on the plan and you need to continue to buy in and you need to understand that you need to eat adequate amounts of fat. The fat is for satiation and satisfaction. Something I've learned that is absolutely critical no matter what diet you're on. If you don't have things to look forward to, it gets to be very bleak and it gets to be very glum and it gets to be it just starts to suck at a certain point. So you want to make sure that that's not you. You want to make sure that your diet isn't something that you're not looking forward to every day. When you wake up in the morning, you should be kind of pumped because you should have a plan about where you're going to eat, what you're going to eat when you're on some of these ketogenic style diets. In my opinion, I mean, that's what I did. That's how I got through it. I mentioned I had wings literally every week, every Monday. And it wasn't like I tracked them. I've never got into tracking anything. I lost all this weight without tracking. I think that's probably important to mention. However, I might have had a built-in tracker because I was eliminating the macronutrient carbohydrates. I guess from here there could be all kinds of questions about getting a pump in the gym and all these various things, but I'm someone that uses performance enhancing drugs. I've talked about it many times before, so things might be a little different for me, but I've never noticed a huge problem with that. I've always gotten great workouts. I will have a better pump. I'll have more of a pump if I have more carbohydrates. Or if I have a cheat day or cheat meal or something like that, then of course there'll be a pretty good change. A cheat meal, let's touch upon that for a minute because I think having a cheat meal every other week or so is probably a good idea on this ketogenic diet because I think it's good to also come out of ketosis. I think one of the benefits of being on a ketogenic diet is sort of brushing up against keto and getting your body used to it. Fasting away from carbohydrates, fasting away from sugar, and getting used to this kind of new way of eating. But I also think it's good to give the body a little bit of a break and have, maybe like a day off of it or a day or two off of it. And it could be more of a normal day. It could just be like rice and fruit and different things like that. And you could do that every week if you wanted to. Or every other week, I could see you having, a cheat meal or two. Just be cautious with it. If you're on the heavier side, I would like to see you go the healthier route because we need you to stay. It's here, The problem is here. It's not in the gut really. It's more like up here. Could be your gut overriding what's going on in the brain, but we got to keep you locked in. We really do. It's really, really important. Performance in the gym, strength. Some of those things might go down a little bit. Don't forget your electrolytes. If you want to try some ketones, there's a lot of different ketone products out there. I use one called from KetoAid called KE4. It's a cool product. I can leave a link to it here if you want to check it out. You don't need any products. They can be beneficial. MCT oil turns into ketones a little bit easier, a little bit faster. So that might be something to keep in mind. When you have a bulletproof coffee, one of the reasons to have a bulletproof coffee I should mention this. It's in the War on Carbs. Please check out my book, The War on Carbs. I mean, you guys should, if you're watching this video and you're jazzed about this, you should buy The War on Carbs. It's very short, very simple, very concise. It just reiterates a lot of the stuff I'm saying here, and it has in written form the foods that I eat. In the War on Carbs book, I did talk a lot about Bulletproof coffee, and that was a lot of times the way I started my day. I would utilize Bulletproof coffee, and then I would fast. So again, fasting and keto, to me, they run right alongside each other. They have a lot of similar features. They do a lot of similar things for us. And the Bulletproof coffee was great because you could have a Bulletproof coffee, which again is just coffee, butter, and MCT oil. And if you wanted to, you can do what I do. You could throw some of the chocolate hydration within you brand hydration into that mixture, and it is just amazing. It turns this like frothy mocha thing that's unbelievable. I guess if you really wanted to, you could use some heavy cream and stuff like that as well, but it doesn't work as well, and you're probably going to get carried away with the heavy cream. It will taste really good. It just could become very calorically dense really fast. But the ketones, or I'm sorry, the MCT oil and the ghee just works better. The MCT turns the ketones a little faster and so on. But that can help you fast from 7 a.m., 6 a.m. until 2 o'clock, something like that. And if 1 cup didn't work great, you might need to have 2. You might want to be careful with the MCT oil though, because sometimes it could cause some stress in the gut and could potentially lead to a giant blowout, which Brian Shaw found out one day at my house when my brother made him a Bulletproof coffee before we went to go train. That was a good story. That toilet never recovered. But yeah, ketogenic diet is dope. I love it. I'm back on it. I'm back on that train. I'm primarily eating like meat, eggs, cheese comes into the mixture here and there. But like if I crave something, let's say right now I crave pizza like crazy. What I would do is I would probably take some ground beef, I'd throw it in a pan, I'd throw mozzarella on it, I'd chop up some pepperoni, I'd get everything all grizzled in the pan and cooked, and I would get the cheese to kind of almost cook and stick to the pan and get gooey and stuff. And then I might even throw like a little bit of like marinara sauce on there. And that would be like the thing that got me over pizza. But there's a lot of great websites you can go to, and there's a lot of great, I mean, if you follow other people that do keto, you can come up with keto recipes. Be careful of like the keto, the fat bombs. Be careful of some of those things, because some of them are just like, it's just getting you away from what you're supposed to be doing. So you want to go like natty keto, and you want to stick to, you want to stick to really, really good, clean foods. Some highly processed food I think is okay. Some protein shakes here and there, some legendary products. Those are all things I utilized the whole way through. Not necessarily the legendary foods products because they weren't out while I was doing that diet, but protein shakes were. And I utilized a lot of protein shakes. My own brand wasn't out at that time, so I didn't have that convenience, but I utilized a lot of other protein powders at the time. So protein powder, I think, is still good. If you wanted to, you could throw in some berries, blueberries, raspberries. Those are things at the moment that I'm choosing not to eat, because sometimes what I notice is once I eat those things, then I want to eat a bunch of other things. And so for now, I'm abstaining from that. In terms of like, you're pretty much just trying to really keep the carbohydrates really low. I think I already mentioned like staying under 30 grams of carbs a day. I'll just wrap this up in mentioning a handful of foods one more time. And I'll just say food categories. It's just easier. Fish, eggs, red meat, pork, some cheese. If I didn't say vegetables, and then that's pretty much the diet. That's it. That's the diet. That's how I lost. That's how I lost well over 100 pounds, and it's the way that you guys can do it too. You can lose weight rapidly and you can keep it off. Because what do people say? What's the knock on the ketogenic diet? Oh, I lost a bunch of weight and I gained a lot of it back. I gained it all back. You will gain it back if you don't stay on a diet. If you go from a ketogenic diet and you lose 60 pounds to no diet, you go back to being the fat fuck you were yesterday, you're going to fail. You're going to gain the weight back. That is going to happen. So I want you guys to take this very, very seriously when I'm talking about these things. I've seen so many people have great success, and I've also seen so many people fail. And it sucks to see, because I think that when you're obese, I think that when you're heavy, you are not allowing yourself to become the person that you can really become. Because I believe, this is my own personal belief, and you can believe other things, and we can agree or disagree on these things, it's fine. But it's my belief that if you go from being a heavy person now into being in better shape, it will not only reshape your body, but it will reshape your mind. I believe that it's something that can change your life forever. It's going to change your income. It's going to change every single thing about you. It's going to change how much you smile. It's going to change how nice you are to other people. It's going to change your own mindset for yourself, your own interpretation of yourself, and your own thoughts that you have about the way that other people think about you. Because when you're fat, what do you think about yourself? You think that you're fat, and you think that that guy over there and that girl over there knows you're fat. They think you're fat. They think you're fat. They think you're lazy. You're at a restaurant. Oh, great, the guy's going to order all the food. There's all these kind of embarrassing and shame things that happen when somebody's very much overweight. It doesn't have to be you. You can gain control of it, and this is the way. A ketogenic diet. I'm telling you flat out, this is the way. This is the way to get started. Because when you do this diet encourages you to stay on the diet. Because you worked for 2 weeks just to get on the fucking diet in the first place. And you're just going to throw it away by eating a bagel? It's like not worth it. It doesn't make any sense. Stay the course. Stay on the plan. There's no other diet like it in the world. Hit up the War on Carbs. You're not going to regret it. Make sure you give it a shot. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.